Keith Richards and Mick Jagger, the heart and soul of the Rolling Stones. At 88, Keith Richards is finally spilling his guts about why he still can't forgive Mick. And let me tell you, this story is packed with betrayal, ego, and decades of tension. You're going to want to stick around for this one. It's a roller coaster. Let's dive in. Picture this. It's the early 1960s, and the Rolling Stones are tearing up London's gritty blues scene. Keith Richards, with his killer guitar riffs, and Mick Jagger, with his swagger and snarl, are a match made in rock heaven. Along with Brian Jones, Charlie Watts, Bill Wyman, and later Ronnie Wood, they build a band that's raw, rebellious, and unstoppable. Hits like Satisfaction, Paint It Black, Sympathy for the Devil, and Gimme Shelter make them the bad boys of rock, the perfect counterpoint to the Beatles' clean-cut image. The Stones don't just play music. They live it with wild parties, arrests, and a devil-may-care attitude that defines the era. Keith and Mick, the Glimmer Twins, are the driving force, writing songs together, sharing the spotlight, and building a legacy that's still kicking today. But somewhere along the way, their brotherhood turned into a battle, and Keith's recent confessions at 88 reveal why the wounds still haven't healed. So what's got Keith so mad that he can't forgive Mick after all these years? To get it, we need to go back to the start. Keith and Mick grew up together in Dartford, England, bonding over their love for blues and rock and roll. They were tight like brothers, and when the Stones formed in 1962, they were a united front. Keith was the musical genius, crafting riffs that gave the Stones their edge, while Mick was the frontman, strutting and singing his way into fans' hearts. They wrote songs as a team, with Keith often coming up with the music and Mick handling the lyrics. Albums like Sticky Fingers, Exile on Main Street, and Some Girls were proof of their magic together. But even in the early days, there were hints of trouble. Keith's all about the music, living for the next riff, while Mick's got an eye on fame, always thinking about the band's image and the next big move. By the 1980s, things started to crack. The Stones were still huge, but the rock and roll lifestyle was taking its toll. Keith was deep into heroin addiction for much of the 70s, though he cleaned up by the early 80s. Mick, meanwhile, was chasing a different kind of high solo stardom. In 1985, Mick released his first solo album, She's the Boss, and Keith took it personally. To Keith, the Stones were everything, a band above all else. Mick going solo felt like a betrayal, like he was putting his own ego over the group. Keith said in recent interviews that Mick's solo move was the first big wedge between them. He felt abandoned, especially since he'd stuck by Mick through the band's wildest years, including drug busts and legal battles. Keith's blunt about it. Mick wanted to be a pop star, not a Stone. But it wasn't just the solo career. Keith's confessions point to a deeper issue: Mick's need for control. By the 80s, Mick was acting like the band's CEO, making decisions about tours, producers, and even song choices without always consulting Keith. Keith, who sees himself as the Stones' soul, hated being sidelined. He said that Mick started treating the band like his personal project, which drove Keith nuts. One big flashpoint was the Dirty Work album in 1986. Mick was barely around during recording, focusing on his solo stuff, and Keith had to carry the load. The album suffered, and so did their relationship. Keith's called that period the beginning of the end of their friendship, and he's still bitter about it. Then there's the personal side. Keith and Mick's personalities have always been oil and water. Keith's the laid-back outlaw, loyal to the band and the music, happy to live in the moment. Mick's the planner, always looking ahead, obsessed with staying relevant. Keith said in interviews that Mick's ego got worse as the Stones got bigger. He'd take credit for things that were a team effort, and Keith felt like his contributions were being overshadowed. One story Keith shared is about a 1980s tour where Mick insisted on flashy stage setups and pop-heavy setlists, ignoring Keith's push for a raw, bluesy vibe. He felt like Mick was turning the Stones into a circus, and he's never let it go. Another sore spot: women. Keith's confessions hint at tension over their love lives. In the 60s and 70s, Mick was the ultimate ladies' man, and Keith was no saint either. But things got messy when Mick allegedly made a move on Keith's longtime partner, Anita Paul Enberg, during the filming of Performance in 1968. Keith's never confirmed it outright, but he's dropped hints that Mick's wandering eye caused problems. Later, in the 80s, Keith was hurt when Mick didn't support him during his relationship struggles. Keith said that Mick's selfishness in personal matters added to the rift. It wasn't just about the band, it was about loyalty, and Keith felt Mick wasn't there when it counted. The feud hit a low point in 2010. Keith published his memoir, Life. The book was a no-holds-barred look at his journey, and he didn't hold back on Mick. He called him unbearable and even took a cheap shot at his manhood, nicknamed Brenda by the band. Fans ate it up, but Mick was livid. He said publicly that the book hurt him, and it nearly broke the Stones for good. Keith's recent comments show he doesn't regret writing Life, but he admits it stirred the pot. He said he was just being honest, but Mick saw it as a public betrayal. The fact that Keith's still standing by those words at 88 shows how deep the grudge runs. So why can't Keith forgive Mick? It's not just one thing, it's a lifetime of slights. Keith feels like Mick put his own ambitions over the band, broke their trust, and never owned up to it. He said in interviews that Mick's never apologized for the solo albums, the control grabs, or the times he left Keith hanging. Keith's a guy who values loyalty above all else, and to him, Mick's actions were disloyal. At the same time, Keith's admitted he's not blameless. His drug years put the band through hell, and his stubbornness didn't help. But for Keith, Mick's the one who crossed the line too many times. What's wild is that the Stones are still going. At 88, Keith and Mick are still touring, still making music, still selling out stadiums. But Keith's confessions make it clear their relationship is professional, not personal. They're like an old married couple who stay together for the kids, in this case, the fans and the band. Keith said they make it work, but the warmth is gone. He misses the days when they were mates, writing songs in a tiny flat, dreaming big. Now it's about the show, not the bond. For fans, this feud adds a layer to the Stones' music. When you hear Angie, Wild Horses, or Brown Sugar, you're hearing the push and pull of Keith and Mick's partnership. Their tension fueled their creativity, but it also broke their friendship. Keith's honesty at 88 is a gift. It's a chance to see the human side of two icons who've lived 1,000 lives. It's a reminder that even the greatest bands are built on fragile, messy relationships. What do you think about this? Are you Team Keith or Team Mick? Can you believe they're still holding grudges after all these years? Drop your thoughts in the comments, and let's get the conversation rolling. If you're loving these deep dives into music history, give this video a thumbs up and subscribe